Today I am joined by Mayor Rickey Williams Jr. He is the mayor of Danville, and we will be discussing some of the issues that the city of Danville faces and measures that the mayor and his team is putting in place to address these issues. Mayor Williams, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So, first off, Mayor Williams, what are the three biggest issues that you would say the city of Danville now faces, and what are your goals in terms of addressing these issues?
Absolutely. The three biggest issues that we face are, number one, crime and the perception of crime, and sometimes those two don't match. The second biggest problem that we have is issue with an aging infrastructure and blight in our community. And the third biggest problem that we have are underfunded pension obligations for both the police and fire departments.
Okay, so let's start with the big one, crime. I was looking, I just Googled Danville news before I got here, and I realized that most of the stories are about shootings and robberies here in Danville. I know as the mayor of the city, this must be a concern for you. What are some of the measures or are your goals that you're putting in place or working on to address this monster?
The first thing is making sure that we shore up our relationship with the citizens of Danville. I believe in the short time that Chief Yates has been in charge, he and his team have done a better job of reaching out to the public, not only in those times when there is trouble or they might be needed for an issue that's arisen, but on those proactive times, having meetings to talk about future solutions. Last night, Commander Doug Miller was with me at the reading night at DACC. They're attending neighborhood association meetings so they can get to know people. So I think building relationships is a big part of that strategy to correct things. Mm-hmm. When you have those better relationships, then you also have more cooperation. Unfortunately, our police can't be everywhere at all times, and so there are going to be things that we don't see. But someone usually does. Someone has seen something. Someone has heard something. Right. Someone knows something. So we're working really hard to make sure that people feel safe to come forward and tell us what they know so that we're able to better solve crimes. Some of the other things that we're doing that are proactive are instating some new divisions within the police department. We have hired additional officers, so we will have 64 officers. We currently have 63 officers on the force, and we'll be hiring another one here soon, so we'll have a total of 64. What that will allow us to do, once the officers finish their training, both at the academy and here, they will be able to go out and fill patrol spots. But then that allows us to put our special units in place, which are the POP unit. They're going to be focusing specifically on violence, gang activity, and drug activity. If there's something happening in a certain area at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, they'll be there. If it's happening on a 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, they'll be there. They'll have flexible hours, but they'll be proactive in building relationships with people and getting out of the car and talking to them. Part of the problem that we have now is that they have such a high volume of calls. Let's say you have a police officer who wants to go to the Boys and Girls Club and shoot hoops with the kids. He or she might start doing that, and then boom, that radio hits, they've got to go. So now they've moved away. So the POP unit is the Problems-Oriented Policing Unit. That's going to consist of 4 officers. We're also going to have a community housing unit, which will consist of two officers. What are they going to do? They're going to be spending times in our larger housing complexes throughout the community, getting to know the residents, going to their holiday and birthday parties, going to their orientations so that people know what to expect from them, right? And also, if there are issues, then the housing places will have a specific contact that they can reach out to address some of their problems. And the last is the Traffic and Interdiction Unit. And some people say to me, we get oh, Mayor, you're not doing anything about anything else, so you're just going to give people tickets. Right. But here's the thing. Whenever we stop someone for a ticket, other things usually happen. A lot of times, we get drugs off the street. A lot of times we're able to catch people who are out on warrants for violent crimes. We've gotten guns off the streets through those traffic interdictions. And most importantly, we've saved lives. You know, one of the highest percentages of death in our state right now is from distracted driving, people on their phones. Right. It ruins their property, right? So we want to make sure that we're being proactive in that area to help people. The other big thing that we're doing, which is very important, is we are going to be installing community cameras. They're going to be situated in places throughout the city of Danville where we've had some issues, right? Because then if someone doesn't tell, we won't need that information as much because we'll be able to see with our own eyes and ears what is happening. They installed camera systems at Fair Oaks Housing Complex a few years ago, and that has helped us solve so many crimes and reduce the amount of violence so that the people who live there can have peace. And that's what we want for all the people of Danville and for anyone who would be visit here, to feel safe and to know that if they come to Danville, they're going to have a good time and not be bothered.
You speak about building relationship with the police. Would you say that since that initiative has started, has it started bearing any fruit in terms of persons giving information to the police or alerting the police to any crime whatsoever?
Absolutely. You know, I'm very proud and thankful to God and to our police force and our community for helping make this happen. But we went almost 6.5 months without a murder in the city of Danville. And unfortunately, just shy of 2 weeks ago, a young man was killed. But you know what? Within 2 days, Anthony, we had the people who we believe were responsible in custody. And it's because we found good evidence and because people were willing to talk about what they saw. See, we go around and we tell people, see something, say something, but for a while they weren't, and now they're starting to do that.
Let's take on the second issue that you spoke about.
Yes.
All right, tell me what are the plans to, are your goals in terms of addressing that?
So, you know, unfortunately, Danville's an aging community, and for a while, some of our infrastructure in terms of sewers, storm sewers, roads, sidewalks, things like that that are important to everyday life of people have been neglected. So right now, we are in the process of creating doing asset mapping. For example, we have just finished televising every sewer line in the city of Danville. Now mind you, it's over 300 miles. Okay. So televised every storm sewer. And now you say, Ricky, why would you want to do something like that? It's being proactive. I'll give you an example. Recently, there was an issue where a manhole was under a school stage, and we didn't even know it existed, and it collapsed, right? We were able to put a camera in there to see what the status of the rest of the structure was, and we were able to line that structure, which will give us another 30 to 50 years of life, and it only cost us $25,000 or $30,000. However, had we had to replace that whole line, then you're talking about $500,000. In a place where you're dealing with limited resources, stewardship is the key to going forward. So we're doing not only that, but an assessment of all of our bridges and roads, all of our public buildings, our stormwater, our parks and our public property, you name it, and we're doing an assessment to see where we are. Then we will set a list of goals and priorities based on what needs the most attention to get working on it. The other part of that, it's a double-edged sword. I told you we're an aging community, right? You know, when I was growing up, people would talk about the old timers. They would say, oh, you know, I remember Danville 50, 60, 70,000 people. I'm a political scientist by training. Right. So I had to check it out. I looked at our census because that's the best way you can tell. Our highest census population was in 1970, and there were just shy of 43,000 people here in Danville. Now, mind you, back then we didn't have a prison. Right. You fast forward to 2010, and our population was only 33,000. That's with a couple of thousand prisoners. I hate to tell you this, but I'm guessing that our population is going to have declined a little bit more from 2010 to 20. If we lose 500 or 1,000 people, that means that there are only 30,000 people left. Well, over in this same 40 years, we haven't stopped building, thankfully. We have many new subdivisions, Stonegate, Lake Shores. We have new senior housing services that also where you know hundreds, if not 1,000 or more people live. So long story short, we have a city that was constructed for 45,000 people, and we only have 30,000 free people living here. So that, you see dilapidated homes because people have just abandoned them. So our strategy there is going to be to use our internal staff at the City of Danville to go and address those structures that are unsafe. We have done our asset mapping there, and we have a ranking of the safety liability of all the structures in the City of Danville. And so what we're doing is our team is going through and they're tearing down those bad houses. They're going to do it year-round as long as weather permits. But you also have to start being proactive. If I tear down a burned out house here and a dilapidated house there, if there's only one bad house, then I've stabilized the neighborhood. However, if I can see from that house that I tore down 12 others that are also bad, then we have an issue still.
Right.
So we will be then hiring contractors and partnering with them to do work in specific neighborhoods. What does that do? That allows to make sure that we stabilize a neighborhood or there, right? We don't want anyone else to leave Danville. We want people to stay and to love where they live, right? But if we clear out those bad places, then they feel safer. They're going to stay. But it also creates an opportunity for infill to build new houses. The sewer systems are already there. The electrical systems are already there. Other utilities are already there. So then we have an area or a neighborhood that is ripe for redevelopment.
Right. Would you be able to point to what maybe would have caused some of these migration? Would you say the crime would be one of the factors?
No, absolutely not, thankfully. The biggest thing is it's an economic driver. So, we used to have a General Motors here in town. We used to have a General Electric here in town. We used to have Hyster. All of those places closed in the 90s or early 2000s, and guess how many jobs we lost? 7,000 jobs, most of which paid above the median average income for people in Danville.
Right.
So we lost a lot of people. For example, the plant went to the GM plant. Those people moved to Ohio. Some of them even moved to Mexico, right? Because they wanted to finish and earn their retirements. So that is probably the biggest factor, is that when we lost those jobs, it took 7,000 jobs. So imagine if that's 7,000 working people, even if some of them are married, when they have kids, you're easily at 10, 15,000 people.
Right. One more thing in terms of dilapidated building. There is a building almost right next to the council office here that has been there for some time. The situation keep revolving in terms of what is going to be done. I'm sure a lot of people is questioning, is there a timeline for this building to be refurbished or tear down? What is happening with that?
What's happening right now is we are awaiting bids for demolition. And once we have those, we will be able to compare what's the cost of demolition to what's the cost of restoration. If those things are similar, then there might be an opportunity to salvage the building. However, if they're not, unfortunately, we would have to tear down what's one of our most iconic structures, because right now it's creating safety issues. And as the mayor, more than anything else, it's my job to do all that I can to keep people safe. And that creates a safety hazard, unfortunately.
Okay. And let's move on to the third issue.
The third issue are our pension costs. We have over $100 million in unfunded pensions for our police officers and our firefighters. What does that mean? It affects our bond rating. So whenever we go to borrow money, it costs us more, which means we have to spend more money on paying for things like that. For example, we purchased a fire truck. Our loan amount was a little higher than it would have been if we had better funded. Unfortunately, for decades, even prior to my birth, our city leaders did not pay into the pension systems the way they were supposed to, and that's created a great shortfall. But what I will tell you is we have been making some progress. So I have been here just over a year now. First 6 months as acting mayor, and then 6 months as the sworn mayor of Danville. And I'm proud to say that we increased, it's a small amount, but we improved our percentage funded by 1% in each of those categories. So stewardship is key. We have to use the best. We have to make sure that we are wise with our resources, especially since they're limited. I told you there are less people, less jobs. That means less revenue, right? So that means it makes it critical that we do a good job with the resources that we receive from the people. And remember that they aren't ours. It's not Ricky Williams' money. It's not for my pet projects. It's for things that the citizens of Danville need. So one of the ways that we are going to address that, you've probably heard, we were one of the 6 communities in the state of Illinois that was awarded a casino license.
Right.
So, you know, I'm very conservative when it comes to money. So the casino folks have said, listen, we receive 6% of the revenue, Mayor Williams, so you're going to get $12 to $15 million in additional revenue a year. I say that'd be wonderful. Of course, I would celebrate, right? But if it's less than that and I plan on more, then we're in trouble. So I'm counting on a minimum of $6 to $8 million a year. So, well, actually, probably a little bit more, like $8 to $12 million a year, because we receive not only the 6%, but they also have agreed to give us 4% of their EBITDA, which means all of the money that they make after they pay their taxes. Right. So between those two things, it will easily bring in $8 to $12 million a year. Our goal is to take at least half of that revenue and start paying down the pensions, right? So if we're able to put a minimum of $4 to $6 million additional on there a year, our police pension would be funded fully, not 90% like the state requires by 2040, but fully funded within the next 15 years. Right. Our fire pension is a little bit lower than that, unfortunately, so that's probably going to take another 4 or 5 years. But not only would we meet the state deadline or the state mandate that in 2040 our pensions have to be 90% funded, but our goal is to get them 100% funded. You think about that. You take $4 million a year for 20 years, that's $80 million. It's almost there. If you take $6 million a year, if it is $12 million, you take that $6 million a year, we get there in 17 years. So we believe that that's going to be a great economic impetus for the community.
So in terms of the casinos, when do they have a startup date?
So unfortunately, the trouble is always, you know, with the state, it's hurry up and wait. They only gave us 4 months to get everything together, but they haven't given us any kind of definite deadline as to when we'll have a response on whether or not our application is approved. I do have good news. Someone from the gaming board called our city engineer to ask some questions about the project. So what that says to me is that we're already on their mind. They're already starting to review it. What we anticipate is once we receive that state approval, as long as things go well in construction, the weather isn't terrible over the winter and such, we would then be able to have our temporary casino up and running within 9 to 12 months.
So on that topic of funding also, you were one of the first city out of the block to approve the sale of marijuana in your city, which would also bring in some additional revenue for you. What I want to ask you, though, do you think that having marijuana here to be legally sold in the city, would you think it would be more beneficial to the city of Danville when you weigh the balance? So
this is one of those issues that's tough for me. You know, legally, in theory, I agree with that it should be legal for reasonable consumption. Personally, I've seen some people misuse marijuana and have very negative effects on their life. So for me, you know, I have to balance. I swore to do what's best for the city of Danville, but I also have my personal convictions, of course. So it's a tough balancing act. What I'll say is this. We are going to deal with the consequences of the sale of marijuana, whether or not we have one here or not. In fact, if we don't, I think the next logical place that a developer would go in the city of Danville, in the county of Vermilion, is Tilton. Well, guess what? I don't do it often because I try to shop hard to spend my money here in town. I can get to the Burger King in Tilton faster than I can get to the Burger King on Main Street. So what I'm saying to you, whereas the location that it's going to be now is almost 6 miles from here. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if it were to go to Tilton, then literally our people only have to go to 2 miles and bam, they're right back here. We put it as far out as we possibly could to still have it. It's also a requirement that it's at least a half a mile away from any residential area. So our goal was, if it's coming here anyways, we're going to have to deal with it anyways, let's control it as much as we possibly can. So that's why we very much limited where it could be sold. And then also we plan to use a portion of the proceeds to help with various things in the community.
Another thing that I want to talk about in terms of development, the Carl Foundation Hospital, yes. Their proposal to expand here in the city of Danville, I think it's a $50 million expansion. You had a study session, or was it just to for them to brief council in terms of where they're at and what they're doing?
It was an informational session. I feel that it's important to let not only the council but the community know what's going on. Despite good media coverage, there were still a lot of questions. So I felt it was important for them to come and say to not only the aldermen but the citizens of Danville, hey, this is what it is that we plan to do. And they've upped their estimate to closer to $70 million of development. So I think what this does for us is several things. First, the first and the simplest thing you'll see right away is it changes an entire neighborhood. This is literally, the development is right across the street from where my home is. And I hate to tell you this, but there are issues there. Drugs, blight, prostitution, that cause trouble. And this is right around our county museum, which is where we want to bring people, right? Next to one of our biggest shopping places, Big Lots. So one of the things that I love the most about this is they're going to wipe out all of that blight for us. The other thing that this will do is it will mean that infrastructure that's there, we won't be responsible for maintaining. So all of those roads and such that are in the project area will go away. Then that means we don't have to have as stringent of a police presence there, so they can patrol there but focus on other areas too. So it's really going to get rid of a lot of blight. But the other thing is it's important for health. I can tell you, recently I had to have a test. And so I had to go to the Carl on Fairchild for one part of it, and the Carl way up north on Vermilion Street for the other part. Now, thankfully, I'm the mayor. I have a little bit of a flexible schedule, right? So I can easily do that. But what if you only have 1 hour for lunch, or worse yet, you only have a half an hour? How are you going to make that happen for you and for your family? If you have to take off, if you're a low-income resident and you have to take off work to go to take yourself or your child to the doctor, then you're losing income. So I love the fact that all of their services will be housed in one place. I think that will create some efficiency in terms of service and convenience for the people of Danville. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is that they will be able to eventually offer additional services that we currently don't have here.
What were some of the opposing concerns, though?
The only concern that I've heard is the closure of Logan Avenue. Logan Avenue would have to be closed for 2 blocks for this development to happen. There has been some concern from folks about the time in terms of ambulances and things like that. I've done a lot of research on this. The folks that come to our hospital from the South County, from Georgetown, from Westville, their ambulance services don't use Logan Avenue. They come right up Georgetown Road, or they come right up Gilbert Street, as do the citizens of Catlin. Anyone from the east side of town, they also go different routes. From the north side, they go down Fairchild Street. So really, you're talking about one neighborhood in Danville, which is called the Heights, and then maybe the residents of Oakwood and other rural communities around there that will have a slightly increased time. In the studies that they've done, Carl says at most 30 seconds, and then OSF even says only 40 seconds. They're going to install traffic devices that when they hear the sirens, they automatically turn colors so that the ambulances can get through on a faster way. So what I'll say is this, nothing good comes without sacrifice. And so we're going to have to make some sacrifices of convenience going down the road, right? Whenever I go to Ellsworth Park for our festivals, whenever I go down there to fish, when I go out to the ice cream shop or the bowling alley that's out on the west side of town, I just literally juke right over onto Logan Avenue. That's not going to be there now. But you have to look at the greater good. We're going to have urban renewal of the whole neighborhood. We're going to have more efficient and effective services for our people and expanded services in the future, as well as a welcoming presence for those who live here and those who visit us.
My final question to you has to do with the Upston school board voted to add a 1% sale tax to the ballot, and if this is more than half the school district if in Vermilion County, so if this should pass, it would put Danville up 1% to about 11.25%, which would means that you would have one of the highest tax in the state. What is your response to that?
We absolutely oppose it. You know, in the city of Danville alone, District 118 accounts for more than half of the property taxes collected by themselves. That's without the city, the county, the airport, the community college. So they already receive quite a substantial amount of revenue from the citizens of our city. And what I would say is, although I very much support the schools, my whole life prior to this has been youth and family development, we have to be reasonable. And if we make it so that people don't want to come here because it's so expensive, then we are creating a problem for our community, because we will lose revenue, we will lose visitors, and then that's even less money that we have to do the things we need in town. Less services, less opportunities for people. What I can say is they had tried this a couple of years ago and it failed substantially. And I think the people are tired of taxes, especially here in Danville, you know, where we're going to have new sources of revenue with cannabis, with the casino. This administration is going to do all that we can to hold the line on taxes and fees to make sure that we are not raising what it's going to cost people to live and do business here. This would be the exact opposite of that.
Perfect. All right. So
there were a couple other economic development things I wanted to mention real quick before we go, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that I'm very proud of is the renovation of the historic Fisher's Theater downtown. I can tell you that place has been closed most of my life, or when it was open, you probably should not have been in there. But thanks to the wonderful gift of Mr. Julius Hegler, who just passed away not long ago, he invested more than $10 million into that theater to restore, and it's beautiful. It's a crown gem. As someone who sings, the acoustics in that place are amazing. You don't even have to have microphones a lot of times, and your voice carries. Just in the couple of months that it's been open, it's been a game changer for downtown. I would say at least 5 times in the last 3 months, we've had more than 1,000 people downtown on a Friday night or a weekend. That's huge compared to what we've had for a long time. So what does that do? Different types of entertainment for the people of Danville to enjoy, but also to bring visitors here. They come here for a show, they stop at a restaurant, maybe they're tired, they want to spend the night and go to a hotel. What does that mean? People are seeing good things about Danville, and they're bringing money here, okay? It's a blessing. The other big economic thing we're really proud of is FiberTech, which is a company out in the Eastgate area. They are nearly completed with a $100 million expansion of their company. What is this going to do? It's going to create between 100 and 200 new jobs, all of which are paid above the median household income for the city, for residents of Danville. That also is going to be a huge economic boon for us. So yes, we're excited about the Carl and the casino, but I'm thankful that our city is starting to thrive across all areas.
what are some of the jobs that FiberTech will be offering to persons?
They will be offering jobs for engineering. They will be offering jobs for technicians, fabricators to build tools. So across the gamut, everything from assembly line type jobs to high-end engineering type jobs.
Okay, and they're here already, or?
Yes, they're here already, but they're expanding. $100 million and, like I said, more than 100 jobs. The other big thing that we're super proud of here is, I don't know if you've ever been to Las Vegas, or if you haven't, if you've heard of the Fremont Street experience, the largest outdoor video screen in the world. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Watchfire Signs here in Danville, Illinois, won that contract. Every bit of that that's there now was built here. Our people went there to install and construct it. So now when people from around the world go to visit Vegas, they sometimes call Danville D-Vegas, they're going to get to see a little bit of what we're capable of here.
Perfect. So finally, what would you say to persons who are maybe looking somewhere to reside here in Central Illinois? How would you sell your city to them to come over to find somewhere and reside here in Danville?
What I would tell people is this is truly a great place to live, work, and play. One of our very best assets is our people. When you're here in town, it doesn't matter what race you are or where you come from, people are friendly to you. You're going to be welcomed here. Not only that, but we have an awesome cost of living. You could buy what some would consider a mansion on the lake for $250,000. Tell me where in the country you're going to have that quality of living and life for that price. The other thing that I love about Danville, we have a strong arts community, and it goes all the way from the schools to the community. For example, I'm singing with the Danville Symphony Orchestra Choir for their Christmas program. We have a symphony orchestra. What town of 30,000 people still has a quality symphony orchestra like we do? What I would tell people is if you come here, you're going to be loved and received. You're going to be able to have a nice home and a good quality of living. There are good schools. There are tons of recreational opportunities, not just in the arts, but we have state parks. We have 11 city parks with all different kinds of amenities, including a tennis center. We have our own city golf course, our own city pool. What I would tell people is Danville is the place to be because the quality of life here is amazing, and the relationships that you can build with people are dynamic.
All right. Mayor Williams, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Chairman,
I really
thanks.
appreciate it.